how much does it take to add loot in 3? Oh my god.
Hypixel Skyblock has never been a perfect game. In its early days, it was mostly a side project, and it was a fun game for people to play in order to pass the time. It was innovative as it attempted to merge two very successful video game genres, MMOs and Minecraft. Minecraft had sort of done this already, but a lot of Minecraft's young audience did not stick with it. However, Hypixel perhaps struck at the iron while it was hot, and released its strongest update, Dungeons, in the summer of COVID quarantine. It brought a unique, skill-based combat system into an MMO already made massively popular through the fact that it was on Minecraft's largest servers, alongside publicity ventures such as Technoblade's Potato War. It was a formula for success. But then, why does this update suck so much? Let's talk. Hypixel has always done a few things right when it comes to content and pacing. As someone who has 1,400 hours on World of Warcraft, I can tell you that World of Warcraft shares some common attributes of many other MMOs of its class. Whenever a new update is released, pretty much all of your gear will probably be replaced within the hour. Resets are pretty hard, and the old content quickly becomes extremely easy to grind. Developers take this approach in order to try and to convince a casual player that they can still come back and make it. They can be a sweaty boy at the top of the MMO food chain. However, this usually ends up alienating any old content that existed, so their game never really grows, it just changes face. Skyblock sees this to a certain extent. An early game player will never need to set foot in the deep caverns except to go to the Dwarven Mines nowadays. However, if you look at content within the last year or so, a lot more of it is relevant than in other games. In fact, almost all of the combat related systems are still needing to be done in order to unlock stuff for higher and difficult enemies. Sure, you don't have to kill T2 Revenant Slayers anymore or anything. You're better off just grinding money until you can afford something to kill T4s, or just pay someone to do it for you, but the items used in the Slayers are still very useful. You do not need to do hardly anything in the Spider's Den anymore, but you can still see people grinding Arachne Bestiary or killing Broodmothers for their valuable Reforged Stone, or come Derpy, you can find people trading Tarantula bosses a lot. The End Island was revamped ages ago, and the Ender Dragon is still a massively expensive pet, and very useful even by today's standards. Void Glooms brought people back into the area as well, and Judgment Core is necessary if you ever want to get into Master Mode. The vast majority of Skyblock items are a bit antiquated, but most other MMOs fail to even pass the low bar of keeping existing areas useful in the progression. Additionally, Skyblock found a monetization scheme that isn't too egregious. There are some flaws. If you bought some pet skins 2 years ago, for example, you are now a very rich player, assuming you never sold them. Additionally, some really rich people, we're talking willing to spend 5 figures on the game, are able to buy their way through. But in terms of overall effect on the economy, I currently have no complaints. The booster cookies brought with them an easy way to get their buffs for free-to-play players. I have almost 3 years, and the bits that they generate will give you very cool items as well. Honestly, I don't know much about Minecraft EULAs, but I think most of the really bad pay-to-win servers have long since faded into obscurity now on Minecraft, which is pretty nice. Finally, Skyblock was able to continually innovate an incredibly fragile framework. Simply put, Minecraft is just not built to do stuff like this. It's a miracle that Skyblock even exists at all. Many other servers of this scale would have simply turned to mods to accomplish these goals. Skyblock and Minecraft are some of the first servers to pull off this level of customization and animation work into their games. Duping and macroing absolutely murdered the Skyblock economy, and it's kind of the admin's fault. I've talked about this in an early video, but I'll summarize it here. That video was a lot less structured and rambling. Basically, macroers have always been a very difficult issue in a lot of MMOs, and in Skyblock it's particularly hard to stop them. Basically, the reason why so many people are macroing for so long and getting away with it is that Hypixel probably wants to avoid as many false bans as possible. You can't just go ban people for having a stupid high collection either, because there's some legit farming mains on Skyblock to this day. However, one thing that Hypixel took far too long to respond to, and utterly failed at fixing, was the duping issues. Skyblock's Crystal Hollows update brought random map generation to the game, alongside a new best to NPC money making method, and overall it was nice, if a little bit unbalanced, update. While I have many things I can complain about this update, none of them are quite as bad as the way they handled perfect gemstones. Gemstones in Skyblock are compacted a whole bunch of times through the craft menu until they reach a flawless tier, after which they can be forged into perfects. This takes around a day, but perfect gemstones give the most stats in armors and weapons, so it's worth it. However, these gemstones were worth 10 million to NPC and were stackable without any unique item IDs. A couple bad actors did a topaz dupe that was massive and dumped all the topaz out of the market, absolutely ruining the economy. People bought perfect gemstones in the thousands for essentially free and sold it back to the NPC the next day for billions of coins. Skyblock did not even attempt to roll back, even though they were aware of the issue mere hours after it happened. They merely banned the people selling gems and drove to the bazaar. They were duping alts anyway, it didn't matter. This only encouraged more duping and absolutely ravaged the state of the economy, and that is going to be a talking point later on. After enough of these incidents, including a dupe glitch that was so simple that all you had to do was buy something off of the bazaar, and then for some reason you would get the same item in your sack as well, there was a culture around Skyblock dupes and cheating that started to grow far stronger than it had before. Up until this point, the cheaters of Skyblock were mostly pretty harmless dungeon cheats alongside some shameless macroers. The macroers were harming to the game, certainly, but it was a much more manageable issue. The Crystal Hollows was partially so complex in order to deter macroing, and the admins have been careful to not buff farming too much for this very reason. It's still very simple to this day to macro farming. However, this increase in intensity in the number of Skyblock cheaters would cause the admins much headache. Tykar, a member of a player and staff organization called Nerds, told me that the admins had to spend weeks in development time patching up all the numerous dupe glitches that were being abused. Part of this wasn't their fault, but this caused the nether update to be delayed another 8 months after the most recent content update, which was the Crystal Hollows. It was a really vicious downward spiral. Additionally, other parts of the game were released in really weird manners. M7 came out nearly 8 months after the rest of the Mastermoon floors, and it was only popular for a couple of weeks as a result. Most people didn't really care about the initial dungeon hype anymore, and so many people were ready to run M7 already that the money honestly was not that great. For endgame players, at least. Many players also left around this time because they massively changed F7, killing that active community of players as well, mostly because they made the boss so much slower. This was to fix a bunch of massively abusable bugs, but it just made the floor probably less fun. Now, if you want to get a hype, which you do by the way, it's basically necessary in the nether update, that is going to cost you upwards of a billion coins, which is kind of ridiculous. The nether update release saw hype like no other. The admins had given us all extremely high expectations, and we had all gotten to see plenty teasers on the new alpha network. This was to prevent people from getting wiped and hopefully balance the game much better before the update. This did its job, as far as I'm concerned, at preventing wipes. I don't know anyone who got their talismans wiped when upgrading their accessory bag, and that used to be a massive problem. However, this update also had far more content than any other update has had yet, and it should have, considering it took so long, at least in the eyes of the general player base. The admin sold a grand vision of 5 new tiers of a type of instance content, Kudra. This would get you a bunch of new juicy sets of armor, and they were sure to show everyone exactly how powerful it was. Some players were given T3 daggers on the alpha, and other content creators got to test out the new Berserker armor. People excitedly logged on, but servers were laggier than ever for almost a week after the release of the Crimson Isles. They disabled world bosses, another new feature by the way, and Blaze Slayer was borderline unplayable on the servers. The Crimson armor that was supposed to be used to fight the boss was locked behind a series of 270 daily missions to max out, which is now lowered to 170-ish, I believe. The only reason Crimson was any good is because of a new bug in how swipe works. It's another update a solid 4 months after expected, which was disappointing for many players who expected to do a bunch of this stuff back during Christmas. Basically, swipe would proc in every hit instead of like every 10, and it's been fixed now, but it's just about starting to equalize with Necron armor now that we've had some time to upgrade it. If they wanted an update that took a long time to grind, I understand their reasoning, but the Skyblock player base didn't really want to have to wait months to use the cool new armor, even if they were already endgame and grinding in preparation for the update for months. Fishing daily quests didn't work for like a week, and Hypixel's new official wiki still isn't updated on the nether stuff, presumably due to short staffing. To top it all off, Kudra only released in 2 out of 5 tiers and will likely have to wait quite some time for later tiers. Some people and nerds were talking about that being nowhere close to release. The newest Slayer is less profitable than the Slayer that released 1 year ago. This is a massive failure in 2 parts. The first, glaringly obvious issue with this Slayer system is that even if you drop the RNGs from the bosses, you won't be able to craft anything without dumping billions and billions of coins down the drain on minions. These new late-tier Blaze rewards will remain only accessible to the top 50 Skyblock players for another couple of months probably, because to craft anything actually good in this Slayer, you need to get RNG drops from the new Slayer minions as well. They are pretty expensive on their own, but even if you drop a couple 100,000,000 coins into some T5 minions, you'll still never see the RNG drops. To get a Vertex or Apex, you must be using something called Hypergolic Minion Fuel, which is the most bizarre recipe that I have ever laid eyes on. In order to craft 1 Hypergolic grade minion fuel, which is enough for 1 minion for 1 day, you need to collect and combine 64,000 of the Gabagool drops that only drop from the Blaze minions themselves. To top it all off, these are not compatible with the Super Compactor, as you also need sulfur and coal to craft the higher tiers. Currently, the best method to get Gabagool is to leave your computer on 24/7 AFKing minions on your island. It's roughly 3 times more efficient because of looting, and also because the minions don't have to kill the mobs. If you're looking for a tutorial on how to build a farm like this, I will put a link in the description to one of my previous videos. The sulfur is also extremely annoying and slow to grind as well. The intended strategy is to wait for the volcano in the nether to erupt, at which point tons of sulfur sponge blocks will spew out into the nether, and you have to go find and mine them. However, it's just much faster to use a slime minion setup on your island with corrupted soil, which just involves sitting on your island and right-clicking every 2 seconds. Both of these things are mandatory to get anything cool from the Blaze Slayer, and currently you need to do so much of it that only the giga-rich people are buying. However, the prices are uncharacteristically low for these 2 items. At max efficiency, you cannot even make 3 mil per hour grinding sulfur or a Gabagool. The market doesn't make logical sense because there are so many people passively grinding sulfur to get their collection up or desperate minion AFKers. I understand that this is probably intended to bleed the purses of the rich, but this went completely overboard. Not including maxing out minions, because that takes vertexes and apexes as well. It takes somewhere around 130 vertexes, and that doesn't count other item materials or the RNGs themselves. The price of that alone on the bazaar right now is not calculatable because only 15 of the apexes were on the bazaar at the moment of recording, and no apexes were on the bazaar at all. Average sell price right now is around 85 mil per vertex, so do the math. That's like 10 billion coins to get the Blaze Slayer rewards, which is very, very unfortunate because you also have to pay somewhere around the ballpark of like 3.5 bill for those apexes because they just do not exist. You have to find people to sell them to you because you cannot sell stuff on the bazaar for over 500 mil. This basically devolves into a really shitty gameplay loop where the best way to get these items is to not actually get any of the Gabagool or whatever for your minions and just buy it off of somebody else by mining for money. Also, the new Kudra boss is only partially released and the rewards make no sense. Pretty much anybody can do the basic tier Kudra, which I think is pretty good. Additionally, the pet is somewhat common, which is nice because it is literally a common rarity pet from the basic tier. It will get harder to get this pet for the higher rarities, which makes sense. However, the admins must have been high when they released this update on 420 because they had decided to make a garbage axe that is a 1 in 462,000 drop from Kudra. At maximum efficiency and absolutely zero downtime Kudra bosses, that would roughly take around 600 IRL days of Kudra fights on average to get that drop. It's literally just a clear slap in the face for completionist players. Also, the essence from Kudra is kind of underwhelming considering you need around 250,000 essence for the last star in an infernal piece. Essentially, fishing is going to be the fastest essence in the game right now, which feels kind of weird. The fishing system is good at least, and is pretty fun for people who are Iron Manning the new sets. However, people don't have an incentive to grind the harder trophy fish sets right now, which is supposed to be the bulk of the fishing update. You get 0 crimson essence from trophy fishing, and once you get an epic Kudra pet, we already know that it will give you an increase of trophy fish chance. Also, the admin somehow managed to reintroduce talisman stacking with Odger's Tooth rarities giving sea creature chance even if you already have one. However, when it comes down to it though, if the gameplay is fun, the game is worth playing. However, you should 100% not play the new game update if you are trying to sweat and be a completionist player. Pretty much anything you're doing in the nether right now is done faster by just mining in the crystal hollows and buying your gear and essence through that. There's 100 things I could complain about in this update still, but I am nearly 3,000 words into this script, and I don't want the video getting too long. Some honorable mentions of things that piss me off include the inconsistency of mon spawning in some packs still, the inconsistency of soulbound items, the fact that heavy pearls are boostable with co-ops, the lack of focus by the admin team to work at one thing at a time. The way admin attention is divided on like 6 different projects seems random and disjointed when your main project is suffering so catastrophically. Am I quitting Hypixel Skyblock? No, not yet. However, I am not optimistic about Skyblock's future right now. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.